Okay, maybe it's about time for a new telling of the Tom Sawyer story. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore, and there have been a lot of gender swapped movies, right? We've seen your Ghostbusters. We've seen lots of films where they gender swap characters. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. For the film that we're going to talk about today, it completely worked, and I was very surprised by it. The classic story of Tom Sawyer, told as Thomasina Sawyer. Let's talk to one of the directors of the film. Kelley Kali is joining us here on the Film Threat Podcast. How you doing today, Kelley?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I will say this. I think there have been, some attempts to gender swap characters in films where it's worked and it hasn't worked. I think I'm very excited for the upcoming Dune movie where they gender swap the character of Liet Kynes, which is sort of the gender sort of irrelevant to that character. And it's like, it's more the function of Liet Kynes, that role as the judge of the change. Okay, now I'm going down a Dune rabbit hole. I didn't mean to do that.
But you're not, because it still applies to this film, because it's another, Tom Sawyer is another character where the gender really doesn't matter.
First of all, I didn't believe it until I saw the movie. And then I was like, wait a sec. The gender is kind of irrelevant. I mean, he is a tomboy and loves adventure, loves to be mischievous and get into trouble. It's like those attributes, the attributes of Tom Sawyer are not gender specific.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was surprised how well the story worked. And actually my memory of it, because I've seen Tom Sawyer movies when I was a kid and I read the book, and it surprised. Two things really struck me. I'm sorry I'm talking so much. But the thing about, one thing that struck me was, one, doesn't matter, the gender doesn't matter. And two, I don't know that you changed the story all that much. It really was like, I'm trying to and then the third thing that struck me was that this is a story for kids. And then I was like, oh, wait, there are so many more adult layers to the story that are scary. So with that mouthful, and I apologize, I'm talking too much for an interview. Tell me where this project came from and what made you decide to approach taking this classic Mark Twain story and gender swapping the main character.
So, Elysium, that production company, partnered with the University of Southern California and to give the opportunity to younger filmmakers to have the experience of working on a feature film. And so you had to you had to be considered and selected, and you've had to have some shorts and bodies of work to be able to do so. And so I was one of the directors selected out of 10. And it was interesting because we had to work as one body of directors to tell this story as a unit, because we had to break it up into 10 units, but we all had to be on the same page with where we saw the characters going and the vision.
Well, it totally works. It does seem like I didn't even realize in the end that there were multiple directors until the credits. And then I was like, wait a sec, there's like a whole list of names here, right? But it does feel like one creative vision. When the script was being adapted, when did you realize hey, wait a second, it really just doesn't matter the gender? I think in some, they've almost leaned on gender a bit too much. And I feel like this, you don't other than just and the character's still named Tom, right? Which I think works because Thomasina is, I guess, what would be considered a tomboy. But when did you realize that it was we don't really need to actually alter the story all that much?
Yeah, so the credit goes to the writers. There was another team of writers, just how there was a team of directors. So there was a writer. So what's really interesting about this is that it's a feature film that's kind of created like television is. They had a writer's room, same room, University of Southern California, John Watson is our lead producer. Jenna Cavell and David Rochelle were our producers on this project as well. And they saw it through from the writer's room. And so in the writer's room is where they saw this vision and was able to write the character in a way that it really didn't matter her gender, and it didn't, they made it a point to try their best to make this more about a child's experience than to focus on gender. And I think that really shone through.
It worked. And also certain sections of the story, I mean, some are sort of fanciful and whimsical and comedic, like The Fence, that classic story of The Fence.
Yeah.
You know, painting the fence. I feel like I've used that with Film Threat. It's like just in running my website, I feel like it's like I'm constantly, that Tom Sawyer story of painting the fence is always like, that's how you kind of rally a group to do something together.
Yep, I did that too. I just said that to a friend yesterday because I had to go to a color session and she's not in the industry and I needed a ride. And I was like, oh man, don't you want to see what a color session is like? It's going to be fantastic. And we're in the theater and we're going to be spaced out and safe. And you're going to love. She's like, oh my God, I'd love to. After like 4 hours, she's like, never again.
Well, I've always loved that story. But then, you know, as the story goes on, there are much more serious and deeper layers. And especially in light of, I don't know when the film was shot, but it seems way more socially relevant now, aspects of the story. Can you talk about, I mean, maybe you didn't realize it at the time. And you know, we always think of Tom Sawyer as like, this is a story for kids. There are some there's some darkness in this story for sure.
Yeah. It's hard to say if we really were thinking about it at that time. I know that as creatives, we are a group of conscious people. We try our best to be conscientious and sensitive to different ethnic groups, to women, to all of these things. So this was even prior to like the movements that came in, Me Too movement and all of that. But, you know, our producers were already people like that, people who thought like that. And the writer's room was just the same. But even having Huckleberry Finn be Native American was something different, because one of the things that I really liked when I came in as a director was I saw that one of the issues of when Mark Twain wrote it was normal. I'm sure when people look back 100 years from now, they're gonna be like, oh my God, they ate meat. How terrible of them. What a terrible people. But, you know, so when Mark Twain wrote this, it was, Injun Joe was okay to say. Today, that is not okay to say. So the writers, which I appreciated, changed his name to just Joe. And being that he was the only Native American in the story, the original story, they came up with the best idea to have the storyline and have other Native American characters in it, such as Huckleberry Finn, so that you have you show the variety of personalities and people. No one is just one note, so that we don't have just one bad guy that's Native American. We also have hero characters that are Native American. So like little things like that were thought of and given consideration, because we didn't want to go into remaking a movie and repeat the same sort of hurtful representation that has been done throughout history.
Well, it also struck me that it didn't change the overall. It shows how powerful the story is. It didn't change it all that much. And as you point out, it actually added other layers. I'm curious how people have reacted to the film. I just think that the fact that it's this group project that seems to have such a cohesive creative vision, I think definitely speaks to the strong screenplay. But like, how have people reacted to it? Has there been some pushback? I know that there was a huge pushback to the female Ghostbusters movie, and just
because you brought it up, I was thinking that movie. Yeah,
well, you can't put this in the same category. I actually think the female Ghostbusters movie was just, it was fraught with a lot of problems, and it just was not as funny, especially considering how talented that cast is. I mean, Melissa McCarthy, like, you've got these amazing talents, and I feel like they were maybe just too reactive to the times. It's almost like that movie was trolling its audience. Mm-hmm. And you can't, I feel like when you think of your audience, you have to think of your audience as customers, right? Like and I feel that seeing this, and I don't, like I say, I'm not trying to put it in the same category as female Ghostbusters. But what I'm saying is when you see other attempts to gender swap or switch things up fail, and then you see other attempts where I think, at least in the case of, say, Dune, I feel like that's going to be very successful.
Yeah.
And I think that what you did with Thomasina Sawyer succeeds because it doesn't lean on that so much. The character's attributes have less to do with the gender and race. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? I feel like you pulled it off successfully. Other times it has not been pulled off successfully.
I honestly have nothing to say to that, because I agree with you. It's okay, good. Yeah, I 100% agree with you with that. It just, I can't say, because I don't know what the approach was in the writing, you know, for like a female Ghostbusters or any other movie of the sort that is attempting to remake in a more female driven lead. But what I do know that for us, I got to give it to the writers. They didn't go in there thinking, well, this is about a girl, you know, or at least it feels like they didn't, because it just feels like this is about a child, and we're going to cast who's great, and it's a girl, and we're going to call it Thomasina. It's like as though they didn't go into it thinking, how do we make this girl like to appease an audience who want to see more girls? It's more like, how do we make this character appealing? How do we make this character relatable? And how do we make this character someone that's just fun to watch and be with? And it's not about the gender, and it just so happens that it's Thomasina. And so
it works. I also feel it's interesting because Becky's in it, right? Mm-hmm. The character of Becky, she's relatively unchanged. I thought there might have been something with Thomasina and Becky. I'm glad it didn't go there. It just didn't really. I thought it might have.
You know, we kept it real vague, didn't we?
Yeah. No, but it's okay. It's just, like I say, I feel like a character's attributes, for the most part, it's like about that character. I think, and I feel like you nailed it. I'm curious though, have audiences pushed back? Has there been? I mean, we live in a time where everything is outrage. You know, if someone likes the wrong tweet, it's that's a story on social media. So have people pushed back against the film? What's the reaction from audiences? And when I say this, I say, what's the reaction from audiences who've actually seen it? Because I could see someone being really upset with the film if they haven't seen it, having seen it. But I'm just curious if you've encountered any pushback.
As of now, I mean, the film just released. So as of now, no, I have not experienced it, or I haven't heard of any particular pushback. I think also we're in a little bit safer area because we're in an American historic novel. Like, it's old, so nobody's like really holding this dear to their heart like Ghostbusters. Like, you grew up on Ghostbusters, you know what I mean? And so I think that it's maybe a little less of a sensitive area for people, but nonetheless, in my personal opinion, I don't see what's wrong with exploring something that's an American classic and making it attractive to all people, not just boys, not just not just white stories, not just like, because we are America. We're you know, not to get on a soapbox, but look around. We're diverse people. We're a diverse group of Americans, and there are girls here too, and all girls don't wear dresses and don't put on makeup, and they like to play just how boys do. And I think that I could speak for all of us that made this film that we wanted to represent that. And I hope that everyone receives it that way, because it's It's only to be more inclusive, and so that we can revive American classics and get people interested in it again so that they can see themselves.
Well, I think that this is the right approach. The approach that you all took was the right way to approach it, because for the most part, the story, especially the more dramatic and emotional parts of the story, remain unchanged. And in fact, maybe made even deeper through some things. I don't want to go into too much detail. I want people to see the movie. But
there's also twists in the movie. It's not, it's a little different, but still sticks to the thread of the storyline.
Absolutely. So I can see this also kids really liking this film. And there have been so many versions of Tom Sawyer that have been made that this is just you have to change it up a little bit. I mean, guess this is no different. I mean, in some ways is like Hamilton, right?
I was going to say that, Chris, get out of my head.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you can tell you can just tell the story of Alexander Hamilton, or you can tell it the way it was told on the stage. The Disney Plus version, I'm sure you've seen. I don't know if you've seen the one on Disney. Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, I've seen the play live, but like seeing the Disney Plus version, I think is like so amazing, especially with the supplemental material. But
and there are people there's always going to be someone who's upset about something. That's just how it is in life. It's pure. No, we don't expect everyone to love everything. I mean, that's what makes us all different. But at least, as long as we have our freedom to still express our visions and inclusiveness. But the great thing about Hamilton, because people did have a problem with that. Why do you have to change them? They're white men. Let them be white men, But guess what it did do? It sparked. Do you know how many times Alexander Hamilton was Googled and like people are looking up, like, what did George Washington really do? There are more people interested in American history now due to that play and the way it was conveyed to us in a more modern language. Language in the arts changes over time. It's never the same. And for him to have done it in rap form, and to have done it so in music and song and dance, and just, it makes you more interested. And that's what we are as artists. We can turn something old into something new and awaken a whole generation of people who would have never known about it. So I think it's great to have a fresh look on history, period, whether it be American history or history throughout the world. But that's how we keep it relevant, and that's how we speak to each other. We can't speak to each other the way generations before did. We have to speak to where we are now. And artists do that. Artists keep up with the times and refresh things and keep our history alive.
And what's interesting, and I always point this out to people who complain about new versions of things, is like the old versions are not gone.
Yeah.
They still exist, and you can still read Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain.
You can, it's there. Please do.
Yeah. I mean, you should read. I do. Yeah. And I also, what Hamilton sort of brought up for me is like, I just wish they had rap battles in Congress. If only there were rap battles over, I could see, I mean, let's see them. Let's just do a rap battle. I mean,
can you imagine? That's how they settle the presidential debate.
That would have been a lot better. But oh my gosh,
more people tuning in. Yes.
Oh my gosh. But what you did with this is the subtle changes just made it fresh. And I can't say if I heard that there was a new Tom Sawyer out that I'd be excited to go see it. But the fact that this is just different grabbed my attention. And I'm really glad you got to talk to us today on the Film Threat podcast. The movie is out. Just want to make sure people know the movie is out and available, video on demand, all platforms. Is there a website or somewhere people can go to get more information?
There is. You can Google it and see our IMDb for information about the artist who made it. You can go on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, The Adventures of Thomasina Sawyer, and it's on video on demand. They're Google it, you'll find us.
Google it, find it. I think it's definitely a family film that adults will enjoy as well, and I highly recommend it. Kelley, thank you so much for being on the Film Threat podcast today. It was really a pleasure to talk to you.
Chris, you're wonderful. Thank you for watching the film and having me.
Awesome. And I want to thank our sponsor. Go to storyblocks.com/film threat, all sorts of tools for creators. Kelley, thanks again.
Thank you. Hi.